So hi again, everybody. I'm Sharon Weil-Chalker from Foundation for Angelman Syndrome Therapeutics. Thank you for being here at our educational summit. Thank you, Kelly. That was a fabulous introduction to AAC. We're going to move right on without a break to reading and writing in Angelman syndrome, also with Kelly. We'll plan to finish out at 11:15 and do lunch from 11:15 to 12, so please plan to get lunch on your own and be back here on time at 12 so we can keep going with all this great information. If you're stepping out of the room, pick up a free bag from outside the door from Fun and Function. And please remember to put a piece of paper in the box for AAC in the Desert. Carolyn Musselwhite has gifted us a free registration. So put your name, phone number, and email address, put it in the box. It's for family members of individuals with Angelman syndrome, and it's a great gift from Carolyn. So Kelly is going to continue on talking and reading and writing in Angelman syndrome.
All right. Okay, well, here we go. More of this voice. So welcome. I know we're for video, and we're going to start up from the top. At the top of this screen is the handout for this part of the presentation. So you'll see the bit.ly / lovely numbers, set of numbers here, 2J7KD, capital V, and a 0. And we're going to be talking about creating opportunities through reading and writing for children with Angelman syndrome. And my name is Kelly Fonner, as Karen has said. Sharon! Oh, I'm so sorry. I called you Karen the last time, too. I'm going to get that fixed. So a little bit about me. I told you stuff about my communication world the last time. So my background, after I was a paraeducator, I was a teacher in classrooms. I see some of my kids. And reading and writing was a lot of what I did as a teacher. I worked in resource rooms. I worked in a kindergarten through 6th grade resource room when I was in Pennsylvania. When I was in Philadelphia, I worked in early childhood settings. And we were always making sure that we weren't just, doing activities. I jest about it, saying Leaf Week and Circus Week and Holiday Week. We were always doing things that were connected to the curriculum for our students. I did a lot of presentations where we were showing what we were doing in our classrooms and sharing that with people, whether it was on Access. I worked in my classrooms, I always had kids either with physical challenges of different natures and kids with communication challenges. So always kids with complex communication needs of one sort or another. So we were talking about whatever the computer system was of the time. So whether it was getting kids to access with different points of their body. And then as I moved into independent consulting, I was working with some children in their home, and that's when I met Alex. And so I was working with Alex in his home with his family from Alex's age of 3 to 11. And I point him out because he's really when I learned that writing was just as important as reading. And Alex, although he had gone to, at the time, a really high-level AAC assessment center, had a high-level communication device. He was a little boy that had 4 older brothers and sisters, and by 10 years older than he is, and they did all the talking for him. He had no desire to use his communication system to talk, but boy, was he interested in writing. And he was interested in writing from the age of 4. He was very interested in letters. And so Alex was not able to use his hands, but we were teaching him to use his eyes, we were teaching him to use his head to activate things on the computer. And he would just move around and activate letters, and he thought it was just the funniest thing to make just what is called scribbling. There is an assessment tool now. It didn't exist back then. But Dr. Janet Sturm out of Central Michigan University has a writing assessment tool called First Author. And First Author is a 14-point assessment scale called the developmental writing scale. And I've been teaching people about it. We were using it in classrooms. It's been around for, the software's been around for 8 to 9 years. The curriculum has been out now. This is the second full school year with the curriculum. But the developmental writing scale breaks down writing from scribbling to the end of second grade writing. And for many students that struggle with writing and whose families and whose teachers struggle with getting started, because if you're not able to make a mark on paper, often teachers, whether you're in general ed or you're in special ed, people don't know what to do. Or they use an overused practice, which we call errorless writing, where they'll put them on a computer, they'll put them in an app, and everything that they choose writes a sentence. Well, that might generate something written, but it doesn't generate your expressive tool of writing. And what we were doing with Alex was letter by letter generation. And at the same time, his teacher at school was working on reading and phonics. He was in a kindergarten program, the same the same school that his older brother and sisters had gone to. So he was taking in that information. We have, as I talk about these things, we have research behind these strategies for kids with complex needs. Dr. Gretchen Hanser, who has spoken to this community, and you'll see videos that she's done, has talked about her strategies. If you don't know of her, do searches on the videos that are a part of the Angelman group of videos, and you'll see Gretchen talk about her writing strategies called free writing, F-R-E-E, where even if you just 5 minutes a day, give your child access to a keyboard, whether it's a keyboard that they point to the letters and you write the letters down or you type them in, or maybe you're scanning through the letters, this row, and they have some way that they're telling you, I want that row, and then you go across each item. So we do partner-assisted scanning, and then you write that down. Some kids will give a red switch and a green switch, and as they hit the go, 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 then I just keep go, go, and then they hit the red switch I'm supposed to stop, then green, 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 stop at this one, and then I write that one down. So lots of different strategies of getting keyboards to kids. If they have a keyboard in their communication system, we use the keyboard in their communication system. And we use this free write strategy so that they are scribbling with the letters that will eventually be the keyboard that they are writing with. Just like children who are using crayons and pencils are scribbling with those tools that are the tools that they will be writing with. Our children need to be scribbling with the tools that they will be writing with. So with Alex, he scribbled with the alphabet that was in his AAC device that he was learning to access, and he didn't have great access. So he was playing around with it, but he had great motivation. So we were playing with using his eyes, we were playing with using his head, we were playing with using switches and scanning through it. We didn't know what was eventually going to be his access method. But we had a purpose to write. And we could write silly words and hear what the device would say when you put a space in. Wasn't that fun? And it was all right that we wrote silly words. This was the gang that I learned a lot of things from, my mentor, Bill Ziegler. And you're going to see at the end of this presentation one of the students and the path that his student took through. This is Alex today. Actually, just a couple years ago. It's the most recent picture, so it's him probably 6 years ago. So when he graduated from Villanova University in journalism. Little did we know that that would be his path. But he had such a desire to write. He still does not do a lot of communicating out loud expressively with his communication system. In fact, I was just talking to Bill about him at a conference in the fall, and he said, oh man, still, he would much rather write all about it and give you something to be printed in, the local newspaper than to talk to you with his communication device. But when he's mad, he'll tell you. His father has written a book. They have their adventure that you can download on Amazon. So they've got a lot of things going on in literacy. But it all got built up from the time that he was 3. But it's never too late. You have to ask yourself these things about literacy. What does it mean to be literate? There's lots of different ways that we can look at literacy. How long do we stay with strategies? How long, where your child is, have they been trying things? Are they trying things? Are you probing them to try things? Why do we teach literacy skills to all students? Sometimes it seems like a silly question, but I have people ask me that. Should we be doing literacy with this kid? Like, yeah. It's not just about academic curriculum. That's what drives us. But it's about participation. It is about after they graduate, from whatever level of graduation. If not, they're separated. I don't want kids to be separated. Because often reading and writing also leads to entertainment and leisure. It leads to being informed about everyday life. What's the ultimate goal of being a reader? Is to be able to read silently with comprehension the information that you want to read. We have to think about what's the end game here. Yes, it's about what you're doing right now in school, but what's the end game of reading? What happens if we don't get there? I've also met young adults that because they weren't introduced to reading the whole time they got pushed through school, we did start literacy when they were 21. And they got there. They're reading. They're reading for the things that they want to read for. So it's not too late. We just walk through the path, walk through the skills. And reading is about communication. Writing is about communication. That's what we found out with Alex. That was the way he expressed himself. Right? And yes, there are skill development and self-concept that's all wrapped up in being a literate person. So these are important things to be a part of. And simply, why do we teach literacy skills to all our students? Because we teach literacy to everyone. It really shouldn't be a question that any principal, any educator ever asks about any student. You have a nice quote from here that my colleague, Scott Morphilius, that I work with quite often in the area of literacy and these skills, has found that literacy provides us the following: increasing face-to-face communication, increasing academic achievement, increases socialization skills, independent living skills, likelihood of successful competitive or supported employment, and increased opportunities for language learning. So all of these kinds of things, we get from literacy, not just the academic benefit. So much more is tied to it. The traditional view of literacy is that literacy was built on first having oral language foundation, then getting receptive and expressive skills, then getting readiness for reading, then getting auditory and visual skills. All of this was the old way, that once you had reading, then you had writing. This was the old approach to reading. What we know now, and what we've known actually for almost 15 to 20 years, but not everybody practices it this way, is that reading and writing and speaking and listening are all a concurrent. They've got a mix there that overlaps. And that we don't wait for any of one thing to develop before we do another. Because for many kids, if we would wait until communication was solidified, we would be waiting for a long time. If we were waiting for listening, we have children that have hearing difficulties. How long would that take to get settled out? If we were waiting until they learned to read before we learned to write, I wouldn't have the story of saying that Alex was a journalism major. Often for students and for your children, writing is very concrete and reading is very abstract. And sometimes the concreteness of writing starts to help them understand those building blocks in reading. It helps them make sense of what's being taught about letters and letter sounds and all the skills that are so abstract and out there, especially if they're not able to make those sounds with their own voice and they can't make those sounds in their own head. Writing starts to put that together for many students. That they can write it or they can click on an app and hear it that way. They click on their device and hear it. So communication, speaking through their communication system, starts to concretely put reading together for them. So these things working together are critically important for our crowd. Rather than we're going to do this, and then we're going to keep pushing off writing. We're going to keep pushing it off. Now I've told you a little bit about my past history and things that I do now. I do training for different companies. I do conference presentations. I do consultations in classrooms. I have children that I work individually with. So, I've got a mix of what I do. So in any given week, I can be in a classroom with a kid, or I can be in a classroom with a group of students, or, place like this. But with my students that I work with individually, they usually have all of the components of, communication needs, electronic literacy needs in some way or another. And for one of the children that I work with who has Rett syndrome, we've been working, she had her communication was on the path when I met her when she was 3. And then we got reading on the path, and I was pushing writing, and they kept, I only have 10 hours a school year on that consultation. But, we do unlimited email and that kind of stuff. But for whatever reason, trying to get them to get the writing, they kept pushing it aside. And in Wisconsin, our end of kindergarten, so when she was at the end of kindergarten writing exam is to have a paragraph, 2-sentence paragraph with a topic. And so we were pushing hard to get that for her so that she was the one student in with 20 kids. So she was one of the 20 in Gen Ed. And it was with the assistance of assistive technology and her occupational therapist learning about assistive technology at the same time to get to that. But it was a lot of using word banks, a lot of picking topics with her communication system, and then writing with word banks and word banks and word banks. And then in first grade, change of staff, change of things, things drop off, and you're like, what happened to writing? Yeah, her reading skills keep going up. What happened to writing? And here we are now. We're in 3rd grade. She's about a half a school year behind in reading. What about writing? And her principal's asking me, is she going to be able to take the 3rd grade writing test? I'm like, what about writing? I said, I'm continuing to what about it? So when he asked me in the hallway in the fall, I said, I don't know, what about it? I said, every year I'm pushing writing, and it keeps dropping off the mark. I said, if you want her to take the 3rd grade writing test, what about it? It's there. All the tools are there. She can do it. She can do letter by letter. but is it being written into the day? You have to do it. You can't just have the tools. You actually have to use the tools, right? You can't just say you have the stuff. You have to use the stuff. There are a lot of barriers. Kids have to come into the literacy experience. That the developing of being able to develop literacy on their own. You experience the barriers. You get told about the barriers. But it's getting beyond the barriers that we look at today. So all of these difficulties that impede the literacy process on its own. It is a complex and difficult process. A lot of teachers don't know how to get past the barriers. They haven't been given training. Trust me, I didn't have any of that in my undergrad. I was on-the-job training and going to conferences and presentations and putting those things. When kids are often, in large classrooms, there isn't time for a lot of things. So we have to work on it and keep pushing and pushing forward. Other kinds of, not just the literacy issues, but other individual skills start to become issues. Building fluency, language processing pieces that impede. Adding vocabulary, and using the vocabulary and bringing that into writing, knowing words that you're going to be reading about. Having the life experience about what you're reading about and that background knowledge for reading comprehension. Attention and attending for the period of time and attending and remembering some of the rules of writing, that memory factor. So all of these things that get wrapped into a good literacy experience. And these become the skills that we build on one by one. So this gives you some of the background pieces of it. When we look at a good literacy experience, it's something that's balanced. Something where you're doing a little bit of everything. That it's not just, we're just going to do phonics now, and then we're just going to do this, and then we're going to do this. That one by one, as I said, the traditional view. But we're building on decoding skills as we're building on fluency, as we're working on writing. And we need to connect that children understand that reading is about thinking, that writing is about thinking. It's not just about filling out answers on worksheets. There actually is in research a negative correspondence to learning and worksheets. And it has to do with the amount of time that your child finds out their error correction on the worksheet. That if they don't have an immediate feedback on right or wrong, they can learn things that are incorrect and continue to make errors. So if they're doing phonic worksheets, whether it's things that, even if it's somebody else that's doing the pasting for them and they're pointing to where things go, if they don't get immediate feedback on things that are right and wrong, and I don't mean because somebody else is doing it for them, but that they're actually doing it themselves and they're thinking it through, they can learn the wrong information. So worksheets are tricky. And a lot of people use them as time fillers rather than learning fillers. So you have to be careful with worksheets. And making worksheets electronic doesn't make it any better. You still have to get immediate feedback. All right, so whether they're printed or whether they're electronic, it's still the same issue of immediacy of feedback. A lot of people have heard about the 4 blocks approach. What this is the strategies of balancing your literacy experience for your child and making sure that they don't just get a literacy curriculum that's all about words. So this idea about word study or things about guided reading is when we're doing things in language and doing things about reading is thinking, and we get meaning from text, and we're connecting our background knowledge, and people are reading to your kid, you're reading to your kid, you're answering questions. There are some reading curriculum that's what it's based on. And we do a lot of reading the books, or people are reading out loud to your child, and they're answering. But it can't just be that. It can't just be somebody reading and guiding them through that process. That can be a component of it. But they also need to do some self-selection and read silently to themselves or listen to books that they choose themselves. So they start to develop a desire for reading. Pick something that you want to read about. You know, if you like animals, pick books about animals. You know, if you like to read about transportation items, pick books about transportation items. I have a lot of kids that like animals, and then they get stuck in a certain kind. Yeah. And then you talk about it and share. We try to influence other people about the things that we read about. We have little book clubs. You can do that in your family. You know, you can do that with buddy groups after school. You can find a group. I have somebody that they do this with children through, you know, Zoom and other internet processes, right? You do it through Skype with families that they know that are not in their location. So they have Skype groups that they're doing this with because they're not getting it at school. So you fill in for what's not going on with your kid. So give them a balanced reading approach. Sometimes you'll see some reading approaches are called balanced reading, but it doesn't have all 4 of these components. So again, it gets tricky. Manufacturers know what to call things, but you have to look through and see really what is my child getting. A lot of reading curriculum are heavy in this part, you know, where they're learning sight words, they're learning decoding skills, they're learning phonics, they're putting these things together. And again, as I mentioned before, for kids with complex communication needs, kids that have sensory issues, kids that have a hard time holding these sounds in their heads, what you will hear for our older augmentative communication users, for people that can describe how did they, and literate adults, how they describe it is that they will say, I hear my dad's voice in my head. I hear my teacher's voice in my head. So they will hear the voice of the person that went through these activities with them. So as you go through, you know, the lessons that are in their phonic book with them, or the lessons that are in starfall.com with them, saying things out loud. Don't be afraid to be repetitive, because those are the things that need to get into their heads, into the earworm, right? It needs to get into their heads in that sound set. If you make it too gamey, because there's a lot of apps out there, if you make it too gamey, they get too into the game and the lessons aren't learned. So yes, it needs to be fun. Yes, it needs to be motivating. But you need to learn the lessons, right? And they need to get those pieces. They need to see how letters go together and letters go together into words. And that's where the writing and the reading go together. Because that's, as I mentioned before, is how it can be concrete for them. Because they can be playing with that. They can be telling, you know, if they aren't yet typing into anything, they can be pointing. You can be do partner-assisted scanning. There's so many ways that it can be an interactive way. And I'm not saying that you've got to sit down and do this for 20 minutes. You're not going to recreate school at home. That's no fun. You know, this could be something that is in the car while you're driving somewhere and talking it out loud. You know, things that you can be saying and go get a group of words, just, 5 words that you're going through over and over again. And do those 5. We do blocks of 5 words a week. I've lost my clicker. We talk about words and the meanings of words, vocabulary and the meanings of vocabulary. And then, of course, writing. Because one of the things that we do know from writing research is, the writing and reading research is, the more kids read, the more we read to kids, the better readers they are. The more they write, the better readers they are. All of those things influence reading. We can support writing in so many different ways. We can write lists. Point out anything that you do that's writing. When you're writing things on your phone, they're watching. As you're texting, they're watching. Show it to them so that they see written word in lots and lots of different ways. Yeah? It's important that they see writing in lots of different formats. Because a lot of kids think that writing has to be a full sentence. They think it has to be a paragraph. They don't see writing can be little spurts. And even by first grade, little first graders see themselves as, I can't do that. I can't do that, so they shut down. And they don't even attempt. And you don't want that for your child. And it could be that you have a young adult. We start here. I often start the literacy process with my young adults in writing. What do you want to write about? Pick a topic. And let's write. And from there, we'll get to reading skills. People want to express themselves. We have a high school teacher in Schenectady, New York, and she has 19 through 21-year-olds in her alternative high school. And so she has a coffee group. She has a coffee clatch group, and they write. They pick a topic. They write wherever they are. Some of them are writing on their communication devices. Some of them are writing with whatever tools. And then every Friday, they pick something that they've written on the previous 4 days. They sip their coffee. And some of them are reading poetry. There's a kid with a beret. Right? So they're having a good time. And somebody might be reading the letter L. L, 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 L. Because her name starts with L. She picks a different picture every week. But she loves the letter L. She has a different topic, but she's writing L's. And we're moving her forward with lessons. Right? She's starting to put spaces then between them. Oh, you're making some words there with your L's. Let's look and see. There's this thing called a vowel. Vanna, can I buy a vowel? So they watched some Jeopardy. Did I get the right one? Wrong show. Wheel of Fortune. So they watched Wheel of Fortune. So they could see, letters. Look at all of those letters and words. That started to influence. Vanna, buy a vowel. So she started to put some vowels in with those L's. Not a lot, but every now and then. Start listening to that. Oh, what does that L with a vowel sound like? So started to influence her phonics. That's never too late. Other things that we look at in writing is writing and reading is what's the purpose behind doing that? What are you doing it for? And you'll hear and look at another planning model in some situations called the participation model. this word participation is loaded. It's a loaded word when people use it. And so you have to get behind this word and figure out, what do people mean? And I'll ask people outright, tell me what you mean by that. Because participation in one of the books that we have in the field from Dr. David Buchelman and Dr. Pat Miranda, they break participation down into 4 areas. Are we talking about academic participation? So how is my child participating in literacy? Academically, where are they reading? Reading level. Where are they writing in their writing level? And you can do this in any. You can do this in science, history, math, all of those. Is it about where are they? So are they in the regular classroom for their reading lessons? Are they in the regular classroom when they're doing writing? Are they pull out? Are they in the special ed classroom? Are they in resource? Are they in general ed, but they're sitting in the back with a one-on-one? So like quasi pull out? So where are they? Because where they are often influences what they are doing. So they're participating where? So academic is what they're doing. Regular ed or inclusion, where they are. So where they're participating. A third area of participation is social. How are they communicating while they're participating? So again, in reading, we have different activities of reading. So if they're in a small group, are they able to communicate while we're talking? If we're doing a writing activity and we have to read what it is that we've written or talk to people am I able to do that? The other side of being socially participating is my behavior. If I'm in a large group in class and we're learning a lesson, what's my behavior like in a large group setting? And how am I self-regulating during that time? What if I'm in a small group lesson? What's my behavior and my self-regulation checks? And my behavior supports in small group? What if I'm working in a paired instruction? And when I talk about paired instruction, it's your child with another child, not your child with a 35-year-old woman. Right? Not that kind of a pair. That person's already been through school. It's with another child in the class. So when they're paired together with somebody, how do they work in that paired group? I mean, they might need support. And that's the fourth area, is the kind of support that they need. So when Buchelman and Miranda developed this participation model, it was as an assessment tool. And they looked at these levels, and they gave each of them kind of levels within each category. So academically, is your child in reading completely competitive on the same level as same age peers? Are they actively participating in reading, but maybe there's some accommodations made for them? Maybe they don't, maybe they get to take the tests in another room. Maybe they, but they're still doing the same level work. Maybe they're involved in reading, but maybe they're a school year or two behind. They're not doing the same level of work as same age peers, but they're still doing reading. Or maybe reading isn't a part of their curriculum yet. They break down inclusion or the regular classroom participation as being, for that area, fully included, for that area, selectively included, or for that area, not included in general ed. They have that area in a special needs setting. And I have kids that are also homeschooled, and so we break this out as to when you're also paired with other homeschool teams, or when we're doing things over the internet. So we break this out in lots of different ways for our homeschool kids. Socially, it's looked at by influence. So how does your communication influence the others in the group? Or how does if we're looking at it behavior-wise, how does your behavior influence the group? And what kind of supports do we need to be put into place for either of those things, your expressive communication or your behavior? So are you an influence over the whole group at a high level? Are you an active influencer? You know, that could be for the good and the not so good. I mean, it can go either way. And then are you involved with your peers, communicatively, socially, behaviorally? Or are you not involved with your peers, participating socially? And then independence, as I mentioned, in the Buchelman and Miranda model, they use this as an assessment point. Because I'm looking at children and how they're using their assistive technology, I'm looking at how independent are they with their electronic reading tool or writing tool or their communication tool while they're doing their literacy instruction. And so I'm looking at, are they independent with their tool? It doesn't mean they still don't need future training, but are they pretty independent? They know how to launch, whatever it is that they're writing with. They know how to start up a new document in Clicker or whatever it is that they're using. Or do they need assistance in starting up a new document or getting to a new reading part of the app? If we're doing a new letter set, they need help launching that. But then I can walk away from them. I don't have to sit right there with them. Or are they somebody that needs to have somebody there with them? And no judgments made on those, but just acknowledgement of where are they. So when I use this as a participation, and people say, well, I want them to participate more. Again, loaded question. What do you mean? Because different members of your child's team, including you in that, mean different things when they say, I want my child to participate more. Do you want them to participate more academically? Do you want them to participate more with general ed in this area? Do you want them to participate more socially, communicatively in this area? Do you want them to participate more using their technology independently in this area? Because what we have to break down is that doing all four of these things at the same time is hard. It's hard. It's hard to be working at the utmost active, competitive level academically. At the same time, you might be socially challenged by the same age peers. If I've got some issues behaviorally because of, I might have some stress because of being at that high level of academics, or because of the social situation that I'm in, or because I might be learning something new in communication, or because I'm trying to be more independent with a writing tool. This is a lot of load for a kid to carry, no matter what age. And so when children have meltdowns, and when teachers have meltdowns, and when parents have meltdowns, I look at this, and I'm saying, how many plates are we spinning at one time? How many of these things were we trying to do too much at the same time? Dr. Karen Erickson at the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, has a model that they call red, yellow, green. Scott Marfilius and I just boil it down to red light, green light. And so when we talk about red light, green light, we look back at this and we say, if we're working in an area of really academically pushing somebody, I need to make sure I'm doing that with a technology that they are as easy to use, that they know, that they are quick with, that they're not being challenged by at the same time. that is something that's not going to stress them out. We can't have two red lights at the same time. If I have something that I'm trying something new in communication that we're doing, or some new social situation that I've put your child in, I'm going to make sure that I'm not doing that at the same time that I'm giving them a test. I'm not going to give them new technology at the same time I'm giving your child a test. No two red lights at the same time. This is unfair. This is meltdowns ready to happen. So when you go back and reassess when things have fallen apart, I'll often look at this and say, what went wrong in the planning? Or what did we just not think about in the planning of it? That we had crash. And next time, let's think about this. What are we pushing? And I can break down a 90-minute language arts block and say, okay, what are the activities of language arts? Okay, during this activity, when we're in this small group, this is what we're pushing. We're pushing this in the small group. The stress might be less for a student communicatively and socially, so we can push the academic node here. You know, now when we're in the large group, now we're working on, okay, what am I doing? And maybe I want to make sure that they are learning to use their communication system to be in a discussion. Learn how to ask questions, not just answer questions, but how to be a discussion. So now I'm pushing social. And it might not be that they're answering the hardest questions. So now I'm less on the academic and more on the social participation when we're in large group. And so we'll go through the day and we're playing with this participation model all the way through the day that way. Where you are influences what you're doing, and who you're with influences the communication piece, the behavior piece, the stress piece, and you're constantly playing red light, green light. Does that make sense? This is something to think about, food for thought, as we wrap this up. All right? You'll see in the handout that there are other ideas for communication tools, communication reading and writing tools. Mixed my zones there. But these are the things that plan. You know, what are the physical aspects you need to be thinking about for literacy? What are the cognitive aspects for literacy? And you'll see some other ideas with universal design for learning. You know, the kinds of technology tools that we work with. But I don't want to blow too much into our lunch time because I know that we want to leave time for you to be able to move about and do some other things. So thanks so much for joining us here today and tolerating our technology snafus. I'm going to be around all the rest of today if you want to have some conversations with me. And I'll also have my information up for that you can contact me. Thanks, Sharon.
That was wonderful. So thank you, Callie. That was just wonderful. Everybody, we're going to break for lunch. Please be back at noon.
You know what? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry?
I forgot to do one thing, of course. I forgot to show you the video of Bernie. One video. Sorry. Can I have the guys go to the very last slide and show the video? Sorry.
No problem.
I gave you the teaser in the beginning about following through with literacy, and then go to the slide 50 there. So I mentioned this in the beginning, and I just like to end with this one. So this is Bernie when you'll see a video of this young man from the time that he was a second grader and the different tools that he used for writing, and how writing then influenced. Sorry about this. Take a little bit. I saw that we had a little extra time till a quarter after. And for Bernie is now the social worker in a general ed middle school. And you're going to see, I'll tune in as it switches to different things. But you'll see his life from, I think it's the late 80s up until a few years ago. And the final video, when he's in his middle school climbing wall, that's the term, the wall, is with his colleagues at that middle school. So it's his co-teachers that are with him. Sorry about that.
No problem. I was just trying to find a screen I
Yeah.
could see.
Do a spelling test.
This is him doing his spelling test on a large keyboard that was called the unicorn board at the time. This is the boy that Bill Ziegler, my mentor, was working with all the time that I was learning assistive technology. By the time Bernie was in 5th grade, he was presenting at conferences like this, up in front of people. His mom and dad would take him and bring him in and tell people about what he was doing and how he was doing his homework. This is Bernie at high school. He started to make some of his own adaptations and to work with Bill. So Bill was his assistive technology specialist all through. And you would see he used that pencil. Now this was him in college.
Concerned so that children
So in college, he
with
started to play
disabilities
around with speech to text.
receive a free and appropriate public
This is one of the papers that he
education,
wrote.
period. New paragraph. Individual
This is his first access to the iPad. You can be very creative. So this was when the iPad 1 came out, and Bill was fashioning different adaptations for Bernie to use. So you see, even though there's so many fancy things, I mean, here he likes the independence of being able to grab that mouth wand right off of a tray that he can just reach down and grab it himself.
So what do you think?
Well, I think the price of an iPad is $4.99. The price of a stylus adapted for someone with a disability, about $15. The price of being able to use this for mobility, ease, and independence, priceless.
And then this will conclude with what he always wanted to do, which was to climb the wall in the middle school where he worked. So it's one of the phys ed activities that they have for the kids. And he's a social worker in a general ed middle school.
Good. Now try to get that. Yeah, get that leather up there in that brown. Yeah, good. Press it up. That's it. Yeah, get it up there. Try. Yes. Now look, too, Bert. If you could, can you use your arm for anything? You got a blue one right above you there. Can you get that at all? Use it. Nice. Nice.
The man in the white shirt is his dad, the one that's taking the pictures down in the corner.
Yeah. Nice. Nice. Can you get your hand on top of that ledge? Yes. Yeah, baby! Holy hell! Oh my goodness! Oh man! That is fantastic, Brian. Oh my goodness! Yes.
There's not much to say after that.
So let's give Kelly another round of applause for all her great information. Be back from lunch at 12, please, so we can get started on time. Put your names in the box for the raffle giveaway for Carolyn Musselwhite and Linda Burkhart's wonderful AAC in the Desert. And I've got the cards from Kelly about the communication matrix. I'll leave them right at the desk up front if you didn't get one already. We'll take questions at the panel discussion this afternoon, 1:30 to 2:30, so keep your questions in mind. We'll have the panel up here, and you'll have that opportunity.